The suitcase hit the floor like a door, closing forever. Claire Bennett did not flinch. 27 years old, she stood in her father's Nashville study and listened to him redraw her life in a single sentence. In the next room, Sophia was screaming, threatening breaking things, demanding the Harrington heir for herself. Her father folded as always. "You'll go to the farm," he said, without meeting her eyes. "You'll marry the widower. It was your mother's promise." No one asked her. No one apologized. She carried her own bags to the car and drove south into the Tennessee. Dark past the last city lights, past every version of herself she was leaving behind. Hours later, her headlights caught a wooden gate, a silent porch, a silhouette waiting in the yellow glow. And she did not yet know the shape of what was waiting on the other side of that door. The morning before her headlights ever found that farmhouse, Claire Bennett was standing in the kitchen of the Nashville townhouse she had called home since she was 17 years old. The same year her mother was buried, the same year she quietly stopped being anyone's child and became everyone's caretaker. She was rinsing her father's coffee cup. In the next room, Sophia was on the phone laughing too loudly about something at the Harrington Gala. Morning light slanted through the tall windows, gold on the countertops, blue along the hallway, soft on the framed photograph of Evelyn Bennett that still hung above the piano. Claire looked at that photograph sometimes when the house got too loud. Her mother had been a careful woman, the kind who wrote lists of promises and believed the universe held her to them. When she died, she had left 2 such promises behind. Not in a will, not to a lawyer, but in the last private conversation she had with her husband. One daughter for the Harringtons, the other for the Coles. The Harringtons needed no introduction in Nashville. Old money, old name, 4 generations on the same oak-lined street, and a son named Dylan, who had been at every Christmas party of Claire's adolescence, always smiling in a way that did not reach his eyes. The Coles were different. Claire had only met one of them. Margaret the farmer's mother, a woman with gray-streaked hair and weathered hands, who had pulled 8-year-old Sophia out of a flooding creek one summer on a country road while the Bennett family was driving to a relative's funeral. Sophia had been unconscious for 40 seconds. Margaret Cole had done what needed to be done, handed the child back to Evelyn, and asked for nothing. A promise was made over that wet grass, a Bennett daughter one day for a Cole son, and the Bennett women had honored their debts the way other women honored their vows. Claire had always assumed quietly that she would be the one going to the farm. She was the older daughter. She was the practical one. She was the one who did hard things without being asked. So when her father called her into his study that afternoon, and Sophia was already sitting on the leather armchair, with her arms crossed and her eyes shining, Claire felt the first cold stirring of something being rearranged behind her back. Richard Bennett did not look up from his desk at first. When he finally did, he looked at a point just past her shoulder. "Your mother's promises," he said. "I've thought about it. I want to honor them properly." His breath came unevenly. "Claire, you'll be marrying into the Harrington family. Sophia will go to the Coles." The room did not move. Claire heard her sister exhale sharply, the way a person does when they have been waiting for something a long time. "Father," Claire began. "It is what it is," Richard said, still not looking at her. "You're older. You'll handle the Harringtons better. Sophia is softer. She needs the quieter life." There was nothing soft about Sophia. Claire had known that since they were children. But her father had been saying that sentence about his younger daughter for 25 years, and saying it had become a kind of prayer he could not stop repeating. Claire looked at her sister. Sophia's arms were still crossed. Her chin was lifted, and on her face was the particular expression Claire had spent her entire life recognizing, the look of a child who had already gotten what she wanted and was only waiting for the adults in the room to catch up. "You asked for this," Claire said quietly. "I told Father what's fair," Sophia answered. You can't have everything just because you were born first. Everything. Claire almost laughed. I haven't had anything, Sophia. You've had Mom's rules. You've had the inheritance papers on your name for 6 years. You've had the Harrington engagement locked up since I was a teenager, and now that it actually matters, you want to keep that too. I have never wanted the Harringtons. Then it shouldn't be a problem. Sophia's voice was steady, but her eyes had already sharpened. Unless, of course, you're worried about the farm. I'm not worried about the farm. Aren't you? Sophia tilted her head toward their father. Papa, are you sure Claire should be the Harrington bride? They want a daughter-in-law, an heir. Has anyone asked whether Claire can even provide one? The room went still. Claire felt her skin go cold from the inside out. Richard looked up, then finally looked at his older daughter, with something that might have been shame if it had lasted a second longer. Sophia, he began, I am not being cruel. I am being practical. Sophia's tone had a gentle, reasonable quality Claire had learned over many years to fear more than the screaming. Dr. Ellis's letter from 6 years ago. The surgery Claire had for me. She knows. I know. You know, Papa. The Harringtons are old family. They are not marrying a woman for her sparkling personality. They are marrying her for continuation, and Claire may not be able to give them that. Her voice softened by a fraction. It isn't her fault. It's simply a fact, and facts matter in a marriage. Claire did not answer. There was no answer. Sophia had reached into a drawer inside her that had been locked since she was 21 years old. The drawer marked that winter in the hospital for you, little sister, and had held the contents up to the light as if they were nothing. Richard passed a hand across his face. Claire, he said very quietly. Is it true? You already know it's true. He did not meet her eyes again. That night, the house tilted around Sophia the way it had tilted around her for 25 years. She cried first. She said she was being thrown away. She said she was being punished for once for no reason, and that no one in the family had ever truly loved her. She knocked a crystal vase off the hallway console and let it shatter. She locked herself in her bedroom, and then opened the door just long enough to tell her father that if he made her marry a farmer, he would never see her again. Richard stood in the hallway, with his hands hanging at his sides. Claire watched him from the top of the stairs. She had watched this scene her entire life, had watched her father absorb her sister's weather, the way an old house absorbs a storm, leaning and creaking, and never once pushing back. By midnight, the decision was quietly being unmade. By 1 in the morning, it had been remade. Richard came up the stairs slowly. He knocked on Claire's door, the way a man knocks when he is hoping nobody answers. She opened it. Claire. His eyes were red. You have always been the stronger one. Don't. Your sister, she would not survive out there. You would. You always have. Don't. I need you to go to the Coles. It isn't forever. It is a gesture. We honor your mother. We keep Sophia in Nashville. The Harringtons will understand in time. Claire looked at her father for a long moment. He was standing in the hallway, where 10 years ago she had held her mother's hand and promised to look after Sophia. He was standing in the hallway, where 6 years ago he had told her the doctors did not think she could have children, and then had not said another word about it for the rest of his life. He was standing in the hallway, where so many times she had stopped counting. He had asked her to be the older one, the calm one, the one who gave way. She did not cry. She did not argue. She looked at him until he could no longer look back. Enough, Papa, she said. Don't say anything else. Then she closed the door softly, not slamming it. She took her suitcase down from the top of the closet. She folded her clothes the way her mother had taught her, the same way she had folded Sophia's school uniforms for 4 years after the funeral. She did not call anyone. She did not leave a note. At 2 in the morning, she carried her own bags down the staircase and out through the front door of the only home she had ever known. The street was empty and cold. Her breath fogged white in the air. She put the suitcase in the trunk, closed it carefully, and got behind the wheel. The house behind her was dark, except for one window, her sister's, where a light still burned. Claire did not look up. She started the car. She turned out of the driveway. She drove through the sleeping streets of Nashville, past the statues, past the steeples, past the shuttered restaurants, and then south onto the long black highway that ran toward a county she had never seen, a house she had never visited, and a man whose name she only knew from a folded index card her father had slid across the desk that afternoon. Ethan Cole. Route 3, outside Fairhope, Tennessee. She did not cry on the highway. She had not cried in front of her father, and she would not cry now. But somewhere in the third hour of driving somewhere, where the city lights had long since thinned, and the only things left in the world were her headlights, the white line of the road, and the occasional silhouette of a barn against the stars, she felt the small, private realization settle into her chest. They had always been going to do this to her. Not today, not with the Harringtons, but someday with something. Her father was a man who loved his younger daughter in a way he did not know how to love his older one. And Sophia had decided long before tonight that anything belonging to Claire belonged by default to her. Claire had spent her life believing that if she gave enough eventually, there would be nothing left to ask. She understood now on that dark Tennessee road that she had been wrong. There would always be one more thing to ask. And tonight, she had stopped saying yes. Claire turned off the highway onto a gravel road that wound past fields gone silver in the starlight. She had been following the index card her father had given her, and for the last 20 miles, the directions had consisted of little more than a mailbox, a fence line, a bend. When her headlights finally caught the wooden gate at the end of the long drive, it was nearly 4 in the morning. The gate was open. A porch light burned yellow in the distance. A silhouette stood at the top of the steps, hands in his jacket pockets, waiting the way a man waits for weather. She parked. She got out of the car. The air smelled of wet earth and cold hay and something faintly like wood smoke. The silhouette stepped into the light and became a man. He was taller than she had imagined, broader across the shoulders, with a plain work jacket and a face that gave nothing away. His hair was dark, a little overgrown. His hands, when he brought them out of his pockets, were the hands of someone who worked with them. "Claire Bennett," he said. Not a question. "Ethan Cole." She answered because it was the only thing she had rehearsed. He looked at her for a long second, not studying exactly, but acknowledging. "Come inside. It's late." That was their first conversation. Inside the house was warm, honey-colored wood, the smell of something that had been baking a fire banked low in the stone hearth. An older woman rose from a rocking chair by the window. She was compact and strong-looking gray, streaking through dark hair, pinned at the nape of her neck, and her eyes were the first kind eyes Claire had looked into in a very long time. "You must be frozen, honey," Margaret Cole said, and before Claire could answer, the older woman had taken her coat, guided her to the fire, and pressed a warm mug into her hands. "I should apologize for the hour," Claire began. "You should do no such thing. A long drive in the dark ought to end with a cup of something hot, and nobody asking questions." Margaret smiled, and there was no pity in it, none of the careful pity Claire had been braced for all the way down the highway. "There's a room made up for you. We'll talk in the morning. Or not. Whichever you need." Claire did not trust it, not at first. She had spent her entire adult life in a house where kindness came with a ledger attached. She sat on the edge of the couch, wrapped in a blanket someone had put around her shoulders, and waited for the other thing, the reason, the price, the catch. It did not come. The next evening, Ethan found her on the porch, watching the fields go gold in the setting sun. He stood beside her without speaking for a long time. Then, without ceremony, he set a small, flat box on the railing between them. "My mother picked it out," he said. "She thought you deserved something." Claire opened the box. It was a watch, simple steel, understated, the kind of piece that anyone who knew watches would recognize, and anyone who did not would walk past. She had worked at a jewelry counter one summer in college, and she knew the moment her fingers closed around it that this watch cost more than everything currently hanging in her closet. She looked at him. "It's from a farm family." He looked out at the fields. "We do all right." That was all he said. She did not press. But that evening at dinner, she noticed other things. The appliances in the kitchen were modest-looking, but new and very good. 2 ranch hands came in from the south field and addressed Ethan as Sir. A manager came by the back door after supper with paperwork and a laptop, and Ethan signed 3 different folders without raising his voice once. At the end of the first week, he handed her a black debit card. "This is for anything you need," he said. "Don't ask me before you use it. I didn't come here for—" "I know you didn't." He set the card on the table between them. "Use it anyway." Later that night, alone in her room, she turned the card over. No credit limit was printed anywhere on the back, just a private customer number. An old co-worker at the bank had once shown her what a card like that looked like. People did not receive cards like that unless a bank wanted to keep them happy. She put it in her wallet. She did not use it for 2 more days, but the smallest thing undid her. On her second night at the farm, a boy appeared in the doorway of her room. He was small, 5 years old, she had been told, with his father's quiet face, and the kind of hair that stuck up in the back, no matter what anyone did about it. He was holding a paperback book against his chest with both hands. "Read to me," he said. She did not know what she must have looked like to him in that moment. She only knew that something inside her, something that had gone to sleep 6 years ago in a hospital waiting room in Nashville, sat up for the first time. "Yes, come here." He climbed onto the bed the way a child climbs onto a bed he has already claimed. He opened the book to the page he wanted. He waited, and Claire, who had been told by a doctor at 21 that the surgery she had chosen to save her sister's life had probably taken from her the ability to have children of her own. Claire, who had never said those words out loud to anyone. Read to a small boy she had met 2 days earlier about a rabbit who could not find his way home. When Noah fell asleep against her shoulder, she did not move for a long time. Over the next weeks, Claire watched Ethan the way one watches a house settle. He rose before the sun. He worked the fields with his men, not from an office. He did not speak much, and when he did, his voice was low and careful with her. He kept a photograph in a silver frame on the mantel, a young woman with a bright laugh, holding a baby Noah against her collarbone. He did not hide it. He did not explain it. Once, when Claire asked softly why he still lived in the old farmhouse instead of something grander, he looked at the photograph for a long moment. "This was her kitchen," he said. "Noah learned to walk on that rug. I don't want my son to grow up thinking you erase the people you've loved when they're gone." Claire's respect for this man was not growing because he was wealthy, and not even because he was kind. It was growing because he was a man who had loved somebody once and was determined to keep loving her well, even after she had stopped being there to love. A month into Claire's new life, Sophia came. She did not call ahead. She drove up in a white convertible with Dylan Harrington in the passenger seat, wearing a 3-carat diamond ring, and the expression Claire had seen her wear since they were children, the expression of a person who had come a long way specifically to be seen. "Surprise," Sophia called, getting out of the car. "We thought we'd visit. See how country life is treating you." Dylan got out more slowly, surveying the property with the bored expression of a man doing his wife's errand. Margaret came out onto the porch first, drying her hands on a dish towel. "Ma'am," Sophia said brightly, and the word was careful, considered the particular kind of sweetness meant to make clear that the speaker was slumming. "You must be Mrs. Cole. Oh, you've done such a lovely job with the place. It must be exhausting keeping up with all of this at your age." Margaret's expression did not change. "Come inside, girls. I'll put coffee on." They came inside. Sophia circled the living room with her glass of water, commenting on everything so authentic, so sweet, while Dylan sat stiffly on the couch checking his phone. She made a slow, admiring circle of Claire's wrist, and her eyes caught on the watch. "Oh," her tone changed. "Claire, where did you get that?" "Ethan gave it to me." "Ethan gave it to you?" "Yes." Sophia turned toward Margaret with a horrified expression. "Mrs. Cole, I am so sorry. I think there has been a misunderstanding. That watch, my sister. She has a history. When we were teenagers, she had a thing about other people's jewelry. Our mother had to. I really did not want to say anything." Two of the ranch hands had come in for coffee and stopped, still holding their hats. A neighbor from down the road, a woman named June, who had brought over a pie that morning, was standing in the kitchen doorway. Noah was on the stairs, halfway down, one small hand on the banister. "Sophia," Claire said very quietly. "Stop. I am trying to help you," Sophia said. Her voice had the same gentle, reasonable quality it had had in their father's study a month before. "If you took something from these kind people, we need to return it before this becomes something bigger. Don't make Claire sad." It was a child's voice, high and cracked. Noah had come down another 2 steps, his small face crumpled in outrage. "Don't make Claire sad," he shouted again. "You leave her alone." The room went very, very quiet. Dylan Harrington, for the first time since he had gotten out of the car, lifted his head and looked at his fiancée, as if seeing her clearly. The back door opened. Ethan stepped inside, still in his field jacket, dust on his boots. He took in the scene, and his face did something Claire had not seen it do before. It went cold. "Everything in this house is Claire's," he said. He was not speaking loudly, but every person in the room heard every word. Everything she is wearing, everything she has touched, including the respect you have just failed to show her. And my mother. And my son. I was only, you can finish your coffee or you can leave. Either way, you will not speak to my wife that way in my house again. My wife. He had never called her that before. He said it without looking at Claire, but she felt it land in her, like a door she had not known was locked finally opening. Sophia gathered her purse. Dylan gathered his jacket. June stepped aside to let them through. The ranch hands did not step aside. One of them, a gray-haired man named Walt, tipped his hat at Sophia in a courtly way that was unmistakably a dismissal. At the door, Dylan glanced back once at Noah, still clinging to the banister, and then at Claire. "I apologize for the intrusion," he said. That was all. The convertible started up. It pulled out of the drive. Claire did not watch it go. Noah was crying now, silently, the way small children cry when they have been frightened by the grown-up world. Claire knelt at the bottom of the stairs and held out her arms, and he came down the last steps and into them. Margaret set down her dish towel. "I'll put the coffee on," she said. "For us." Miles down the road, Sophia was still furious. "The nerve. Did you see her face? Did you see how he spoke to me?" Dylan drove another mile in silence. "Are you always like that with your sister?" he asked finally. Sophia turned in her seat. "Excuse me." "I asked," he said, "if you are always like that with your sister." He did not look at her when he said it, and he did not speak to her again for the rest of the drive back to Nashville. In the weeks that followed, something in Claire had shifted. She walked the property in the mornings. She learned the names of the ranch hands. She sat with Margaret on the porch in the evenings and learned to snap green beans without thinking about it. Noah began leaving her small offerings on the kitchen table: a feather, a smooth stone, once a drawing of 3 stick figures, holding hands captioned in uncertain crayon daddy. Me. Claire. When the county proposed paving the gravel access road that served half the farming families in the valley, Ethan quietly funded half the project himself, and asked Claire if she wanted to fund the other half. At the small community meeting at the volunteer fire hall, Claire stood up and spoke for about 90 seconds, just to thank people for letting her be part of it. Her hands did not shake. Her voice did not crack. Meanwhile, 4 hours north, Richard Bennett was sitting across a conference table from 2 Harrington lawyers, and his hands were shaking for a different reason. The invitation came 2 weeks later on cream cardstock. Miss Sophia Bennett and Mr. Dylan Harrington requested the honor of Claire's presence at the formal announcement of their engagement. On the bottom, in her father's handwriting, "Please come. Family. Dad." Claire showed the envelope to Ethan. He read it twice. "Do you want to go, I don't want to go," she said. "I'm going to go. There's a difference." "All right." He set the card down. "I'm driving you, and I'm staying in the room." The Harrington estate was lit up like a small government building when they arrived. There were valets and strings of lights, and a quartet playing something inoffensive in the ballroom. Claire, in a dress Margaret had quietly pressed for her that morning, walked in on Ethan's arm and felt every eye in the entry hall turn toward them, and then, deliberately, away. They were seated at a table near the edge of the room, not with the family, not with the named guests. Sophia did not greet her. Dylan nodded once briefly from across the room and did not come over. 20 minutes into the reception, a man in a gray suit touched Claire's elbow. "Miss Bennett, your father would like a word. In the library." Claire looked at Ethan. "I'm coming with you," he said. The library was paneled in dark wood. Richard Bennett stood near the fireplace with Sophia behind him, and 2 men in suits at the long table, a Harrington family attorney and an associate. A folder lay open on the polished wood. The ink was already stamped. The signature line was blank. "Claire, honey." Richard's voice had the particular softness it took on when he was about to ask her for something costly. "Sit down. This won't take long." She did not sit down. Ethan stayed 2 steps behind her, quiet. "What is this?" "It is a formality," the older attorney said. "A trust administration transfer. Your mother's estate left a joint family fund, and for reasons of consolidation, the family has decided it would be simpler to place the fund under a single administrator going forward. Your sister, in this case. You of course retain beneficiary interest in any undistributed principal. You are signing my mother's money over to Sophia." "We are streamlining," the attorney said, "administratively." "Claire," Richard's voice cracked slightly. "Please. You have a husband to care for you now. Your sister is about to begin a new life. It makes sense for the family resources to be held under one roof. It isn't taking anything from you. You will still be provided for." Ethan did not say anything, but he stepped slightly forward, and the older Harrington attorney, silver-templed with the bored confidence of a man who had never been told no, looked up. "I'm sorry, and you are her husband," Ethan said. "Ah." The man's mouth made a small, amused shape. "The farm gentleman. Sir, with respect, this is a family legal matter. Perhaps you could wait outside." Ethan did not react. He looked only at Claire. "You decide," he said quietly. "I'm behind you, whatever you choose." She turned to her father. Richard's eyes were wet. His hands, she noticed, were trembling against his thighs. "Claire, I have to tell you something. I owe them, the Harringtons, the joint investments. If you don't sign this, I lose the house. I lose everything. Please. I am asking you." She looked at him for a long moment. This was the man who had stood in her hallway a month ago and asked her to go to the farm because Sophia would not survive it. This was the man who 6 years earlier had told her the doctors did not think she could have children, and then had not mentioned it, again, had not once said, "I'm sorry this happened to you." This was the man who loved one of his daughters, in a way he had never learned how to love the other, and was now asking the unloved one to save him again. She reached for the pen. She signed. The scratch of the nib on the paper was the loudest sound in the room. She set the pen down. She turned and looked at her father. Then at Sophia, who had not moved from behind him. "It's done," Claire said. "Don't call me again." She walked out of the library without waiting for a response. Ethan followed. In the foyer, a passing waiter tried to offer them champagne, and Ethan's hand on the small of her back steered her gently past the tray and out the door. In the car driving away from the Harrington estate, she did not speak for a long time. The sound that eventually broke out of her was not loud. It was small and private, and came from somewhere she had been guarding since she was 17 years old. Ethan did not tell her it would be all right. He reached across the console and took her hand, and he held it for the whole long drive back to Tennessee. He did not let go even when he had to shift gears. He shifted with his left hand. He kept his right where it was. They drove back under a sky going pink at the edges. Claire slept the last 40 minutes, her hand still in his. When Ethan pulled into the gravel drive at dawn, Margaret was already on the porch waiting. She did not ask what had happened. She sat Claire on the couch, put a cup of tea in her hands, and sat beside her, close, not quite touching just there. After a long while, Margaret drew from her housecoat a small silver chain with a plain oval locket, darkened with age. "This was my mother-in-law's," she said. "She gave it to me the week after I married her son. She told me the Cole women don't have much use for speeches, but they know how to claim the women they love." Margaret folded the chain into Claire's palm. "You are my daughter now. This is your home." Claire could not answer. She brought the cold metal to her mouth and held it there, and Margaret did not fill the silence with a single unnecessary word. Noah found her a little later. He did not ask where she had been. He did not ask why her eyes were red. He climbed onto the couch, tucked himself against her side, the way a small animal tucks into a nest, and put his head against her shoulder. He had understood something in the particular way 5-year-olds understand, without being told, and he had decided that what she needed was not questions, but weight, the small, steady weight of him, reminding her that somebody in the world had chosen her on purpose. 4 hours to the north. Sophia's new life was cracking down the middle. The Harringtons had been bleeding capital for months, and Dylan, who had never loved her, had been waiting for a reason to stop pretending. On the afternoon, Sophia finally screamed that she was his wife and deserved to be treated like one. He looked at her from across the marble kitchen island with an expression Claire would have recognized from a Tennessee highway. "No," he said. "You are a woman my parents told me to marry because your father's signature was worth something at the time. The signature is no longer worth anything, and neither, frankly, are you." Sophia threw a glass at him. He did not flinch. By week's end, his lawyers had contacted hers. The wedding at the farm was small. It was held in the yard behind the house, under the 2 big oaks that had been there longer than any Cole had been alive. Noah wore a small navy suit and carried the rings in a cupped palm. Claire wore a simple cream dress Margaret had picked out. Around her neck on its old silver chain she wore the locket. The guest list was short ranch hands and their wives, June from down the road, Mrs. Adler with her lemon pound cake, and a few people Claire did not recognize, older men in quiet suits from out of town. Ethan had only said, "A few old friends, don't worry about them." Sophia and Dylan arrived uninvited in separate cars 40 minutes into the reception. "Sister," Sophia called loud enough for the nearest guests to turn. "We weren't invited, but we thought we'd come congratulate you. Family is family." Margaret, standing near the cake table, set down her glass very slowly. Before anyone could speak, a black sedan came up the drive, followed by 2 others. The man who stepped out of the first car was tall, silver at his temples, with the easy bearing of someone accustomed to rooms going quiet when he entered them. He walked directly to Ethan, extended his hand, and smiled. "Mr. Cole, forgive the late arrival. Traffic on I-40 was unforgivable." "Governor," Ethan said. "Thank you for coming." The word landed on the lawn like a stone into still water. "The university will not forget what you've done," the governor continued. "The scholarship fund in your wife's name has already placed its first 3 recipients. All 3 from this valley." He turned to Claire, and his expression softened. "You must be Mrs. Cole. Your husband is a hard man to get on a telephone. Thank you for making him come down out of these fields once in a while." Claire did not answer. She was looking very calmly at her sister. Behind the governor stood a second man. Dylan Harrington of all people recognized him first, and Dylan had gone pale. The man was the chairman of one of the 3 largest commercial banks in the United States, and he was greeting Ethan the way one greets a peer. Sophia had not yet understood. Dylan had. He was looking at his wife the way a man looks at a receipt he realizes he is going to have to pay. "Sophia," he said quietly, "we need to go." "Go? We just—" Now, she turned to him uncomprehending and saw his face and began to understand. Her eyes moved to Ethan, to the governor, to Margaret, to Claire, who had not moved, who was simply waiting the way a woman waits for a storm to exhaust itself. Walt, the gray-haired ranch hand, walked over to Sophia with the same courtly dismissal he had used a month before. "Ma'am, the drive out is this way." Sophia and Dylan left in their separate cars. They did not come back. Within 3 weeks, the Harrington Holding Company had collapsed. Not personal. A quiet review of certain joint ventures, a board vote that went the way it should have gone on the numbers alone. Dylan's family name was untethered from the family money. Dylan left Sophia for good, and Richard Bennett, who had not been able to cover a single call on the collateral he had pledged, arrived at the farm on a cold Tuesday morning with his younger daughter in the passenger seat. They did not apologize when they got out of the car. Claire knew that before either of them opened their mouths. "Claire," Richard's hands were trembling. "We need to talk. The house in Nashville. The foreclosure." "No." "Please. I'm your father. I gave already, Papa." Her voice wasn't angry. It was simply finished. "From the year I was 17 to the year I turned 27. That's enough." Sophia stepped forward. Her makeup was less careful than Claire had ever seen it. "You can afford it. Look at all this. Look at him. And for what? You can't even give him children. Whatever he's built there won't be anyone to leave it to." "I could. Father could have arranged it. I'm still the mom. Sophia." Ethan's voice was quiet. He had come out onto the porch while she was still talking. Margaret was behind him. Noah was on the step at his knee. "I want to tell you a story," Ethan said. 3 years ago, I was sitting in my truck in the parking lot of a hospital in Nashville. My wife had died 11 hours earlier. My son was 2 years old. I had not moved from the driver's seat since they wheeled her out of the room. He looked for a moment at the oaks. A young woman walked past my truck. She stopped. She came back and knocked on the window, not to ask if anything was wrong, because she could see that everything was wrong. She sat with me for 15 minutes in the passenger seat. Before she got out, she put her hand on my wrist, and she said, "Breathe first, then stand up for your son." He looked at Claire. He had never told her this. She had never remembered, but her eyes had filled. She left before I could ask her name. I heard that voice every morning while I learned how to be a father alone. And the first night Claire Bennett walked into this house, I knew. He turned back to Sophia. "I did not choose your sister because she is perfect. I chose her because she was the first person who saw me when I had nearly disappeared. There is no child born or unborn who could change that. There is no fortune that could replace it." He looked at Claire. "Whether or not we ever have children, you are enough. You have always been enough." Margaret laid a hand gently on Claire's shoulder. "Your worth, sweetheart, has never been in what you can give someone. It's in who you are when you stop." Richard opened his mouth. He closed it. In a lifetime of rehearsed excuses, He could not locate a single one that fit. He walked back to the car. Sophia, after a long moment, followed him. The car pulled out of the drive. Claire watched it go this time, not because she needed to see them leave, but because she wanted to be sure she was the one still standing when they did. That night, she sat with Ethan on the porch for a long time. The stars were out. The fields were quiet. "My love," she said finally. It was the first time she had called him that. She had not planned it. It had come out the way weather comes out, without permission, without performance, and without any possibility of being taken back. He did not answer in words. He reached for her hand and held it the way he had held it, leaving the Harrington estate steady whole, without any intention of letting go. In the morning, Noah climbed into their bed the way he always did on Saturdays. He wedged himself between them and considered Claire for a long moment, with his father's quiet face. "Is Claire my mom?" he asked. Ethan looked at Claire. Claire looked at Noah. She did not answer. She pulled him in close and kissed the top of his head, and Noah, satisfied in the particular way 5-year-olds are satisfied with answers. Not yet spoken, closed his eyes against her collarbone and went back to sleep. 2 months later, Claire walked out of a small doctor's office in Fairhope holding a folded slip of paper and drove home in a daze and found Ethan in the back field, stringing a new length of fence. She sat down on an overturned bucket and held the paper out to him. He read it once and then again, and then he set down the wire cutters and sat down on the dirt beside her. And he put his face into her lap, and for the first time since his wife had died, Ethan Cole cried. Noah told the news an hour later, threw his arms in the air, and bolted out the back door, screaming that he was going to be a big brother, running the long loop of the yard looking for his grandmother. Margaret was already on the porch. She had always known, 4 hours north in a house that had once been full of voices, and was now emptier than it had any right to be. Sophia Bennett sat on the edge of her childhood bed, in a town that no longer returned her calls. Her father was downstairs looking at a photograph of the wife he had buried 10 years ago, and understanding at last which of his 2 daughters he had truly lost. Claire did not lose her life the night she left Nashville. She found it. A quiet widower on a Tennessee farm turned out to be the richest man most of the country had never heard of, but that in the end was not what made him rich, and it was not what had saved her. What had saved her was simpler and older. A kind woman in a hospital parking lot had told a stranger to breathe. And years later, on the longest night of her life, the road that kindness had set in motion came all the way around and brought her home.